In this video, I'm going to show you how to work the joined shoulders section of my Brookdale vest. So I'm at the point here where I have separated the back shoulders from our back neck. So on the last row, I had transferred my left shoulder stitches onto scrap yarn, then my back neck stitches onto scrap yarn, and now all that is left are my right shoulder stitches. So now we're ready to join our back shoulders to our front shoulders. We're starting with our right shoulders, and we have our right back shoulder stitches still on the needle right here. And as you can see, I have the needle tip pointing to the outer edge, just like this. So step one, I say to lay the work out so the right side of the back is facing you, which it is right now. And I'll just make a note, I am using 2 strands held double here. That's why you see 2 strands. So step one is laying that work out so that the right side of the back is facing, which it's doing right now. Then step 2 says to lay the right front on top of the back so that the wrong side of the right front will be facing you. So over here is my right front. Now here is the right side of my right front. What I'm gonna do, and here are the right front shoulder stitches. This is the panel, and this is the shoulder stitches. So I want the wrong side of the right front to be facing me. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm going to fold it over. So now the wrong side of the right front is on top. And this way, the goal is so that our right shoulder stitches on the back here are lined up parallel to our front shoulder stitches. So then step 3 is to transfer the stitches held for the right front shoulder onto an extra US 8 needle. So here's my extra US 8 needle, and here is my scrap yarn. So to transfer, I'm just going to insert my needle into each of my stitches. And again, I'm double stranding, so 1 stitch is equal to 2 strands in my case. Okay, once I've secured all the stitches onto the needle, then I will just pull my scrap yarn out, just like that. Then step 4 says to pull the circ through so that the stitches resting on are resting on the other end of the circular. So that just means just pull the circular through like this, because basically you just want it to mimic how the shoulder stitches are sitting on that back needle. So I'm going to push them towards this end of the needle. Then step 5 says, using the yarn still attached to the right back shoulder, work the 3 needle bind off. And that's how we're going to be seaming these shoulder stitches together. So to do the 3 needle bind off, you want to take your 2 needles with your stitches on them. And I like to hold them with one of my hands. I'm going to hold it with my left hand. Actually, before I do that, let me just make sure my working yarn got a little tangled up here. So before you start anything, make sure that your yarn isn't tangled around. Okay, so now I have my working yarn that's still attached to the right back shoulder. I'm going to hold both of these needles with my left hand. And I'm just going to use one of the needle tips. It really doesn't matter which one. I'm using the red needle here. This is going to act as my 3rd needle as I do the 3 needle bind off. So to work the 3 needle bind off, I'm first going to take my, my needle and I'm going to insert it into the first stitch on both the front needle as well as the back needle, just like that. And then I'm going to knit those 2 stitches together. So then I have 1 stitch on this 3rd needle. Then I'm going to do that one more time. So now that I have 2 stitches on my third needle, I'm going to bind off that stitch. So you'd bind off just like you would do a regular bind off. So I'm just going to take, it doesn't matter which one, but one of these needle tips, and I'm going to insert it into this stitch and lift it up and over the other stitch. So we bound off one stitch. Okay, so now to do the next bind off, we're just going to go ahead and knit the next 2 stitches together. Then the same thing, take one of the needle tips, insert it into this stitch, and then lift it up and over and off of the needle. So we're just going to do that with each of these stitches. One thing I recommend if you're new to 3 needle bind off, metal needles can be a little bit too slippery. If you have wooden needles, I would recommend using them. They create a little bit more friction, and that helps to prevent the stitches from flying off of the needle a little too quickly. And the other thing I like to do, I really like to hold these needles pretty securely with my left hand, and that also kind of just keeps everything in place. And if your stitches start to get a little bit too close to the end there, I just push them back, and I always try to keep them about equal in terms of the length of the tip from that first stitch. And especially once you get down to that last stitch, they might want to slide off. So I really just hold them with my 2 fingers here on my left hand carefully. Okay, so we'll just knit those. And let me bind off that last stitch. Okay, so now all of our right shoulder stitches have been 3 needle bound off. Let me cut the end. And I always like to leave a nice long tail. Never hurts. You can always cut it shorter when you're weaving in ends, but okay, so then I'll just put that through, do my little knot here. Okay, so now, as you can see, our right shoulder stitches, I'm just going to flip this so you can see the right side. They're now attached. So now we're ready to move on to the left side. So the first step in the left shoulders is to transfer the back left shoulder stitches onto one of the US 8 needles. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so I've transferred my back stitches onto one of the US 8 needles, and then it said that make sure the needle tip is pointing towards the outer shoulder. So to do that, I'm just going to slide the circular so that the stitches are on this end of the needle, pointing outward. So then step 2 is to transfer the held stitches for the left front shoulder onto the other US 8 needle. So here's my left front. And here are my shoulder stitches. Again, remember, this is the front panel. So these are our actual shoulder stitches. So let me go ahead and transfer these. And now this was the side that we also had the long tail. You'll see shortly what that is for. So now I'm going to transfer all of these stitches from the scrap yarn onto this US 8 needle. Okay, so I've transferred my front stitches now onto the other US 8 needle. And then it also says to make sure that the tips are also pointing towards the outer shoulder. But first, I think moving on to step 3, it'll make more sense the orientation of things once we do step 3. So step 3 says to position the work so that the right sides are together and the wrong side is facing you with the back on top of the front. there's a note that says you may need to flip the work over in order to position it. So let's first make sure that the wrong side is facing us. So I'm going to flip the front over. But in order to do this 3-needle bind off, I want the back to be on top of the front. So I'm just going to move everything and flip it over. So now my back, here's my back shoulder stitches. They're on top. And then here's my front. And so this is where I wanted that needle tip pointing towards the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and slide the circular so that my needle tip is pointing towards the outside here. And now here is, there we go. Here is our back. So just like we had done on the other side, we want to make sure that our needle tips and stitches are running parallel to each other, just like this. So again, I have the wrong side of the back facing me, and that's what's on top. So then step 4 says using the long tail from the left front, work the 3-needle bind off technique to attach the left shoulders together. So here is my long tail that's attached to the front here. And here are my back stitches. I'm going to hold these running parallel to each other. Then using one of the other ends of the needle, I'm using the red needle. That's going to act as my 3rd needle. I'm going to insert it into the first 2 stitches. And then with that long tail from the front, I'm going to use that as my working yarn. And I will knit them together. And then we will knit one more stitch. Or knit them together, I should say, one more. So that we have 2 stitches now on this 3rd needle. And then we will insert one of the needle tips into that stitch and lift it up and over the other stitch. So we bound off 1 stitch. And so just like we had done on the other side, we will do that for all of the stitches here. Okay, so I'm just working my last stitch, and then I will do my last bind off. There we go. Then I will just pull my tail through and secure it. Okay, so now our shoulders are attached. I'm just going to flip everything so that the right side is facing so you can see what it looks like once you're done with this section. Okay, so here is our right shoulder, and we have our shoulder stitches attached. We have our front panels, which we're going to get to next. And then here is our left shoulder stitches, all attached. So that is how you work the joined shoulder section of the Brookdale vest. If you'd like to move on to the next section, the joined front panel ends, you can check out my next video.